Hey, how you doing? Guess where we are again today? Big City Studio. And I got someone I've been waiting to talk to for 33 years. Could you imagine that? Have a look at this. His name is Nick Smash, and this is his new book. Say hi to him.
Hi, Derek.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
And you've just arrived from London.
Yeah, a bit fuzzy around the edges, but yeah.
Fuzzy around the edges is actually quite good. When did you leave Toronto?
July 1983.
83. Oh, you didn't even let it climax, did you? Seriously.
Yeah, well, it was time to leave. I think it was in the Rent Boys. We sort of did what we were able to do, and the only option for us, we felt at the time, was to go over to London, but that wasn't.
So the whole group went?
Yeah.
Really? Tell me about that.
Well, we got off the plane and ended up living in North London for a bit. And then we got kicked out of where we were living and we ended up squatting, and then we ended up on the dole, and we did a few gigs here and there. The bass player and the horn player got bored of that and came back here.
Yes.
We struggled on for a while. Well, it wasn't very successful, so we actually did a single with Jah Wobble, which was good.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, you know, you called yourselves the Rent Boys.
Yeah.
In London, that means something more than it does here.
Yeah.
In Canada. Yeah. I would have thought, therefore, it would have worked dramatically well.
Well, the gigs that we actually did there were really good. But you know, we only did about half dozen, so there wasn't enough time for sort of the word of mouth to get out and for a reputation to build. But you know, we still had a really good review in Sounds magazine, and so it was working. But we just didn't give it enough time, and you know, the other guys had enough. I mean, London was a very tough place to live in, even tougher than Toronto. So.
Well, you see, what it suggests, however, is that it's not easy to make it as a musician or a group or an artist. I refuse to call anybody an act, so I won't do that because I think it's an insult. I think acts belong in the circus. So musicians, artists, groups, not easy. Yeah. However, I have to tell you, you and the other guys put everything into it that you had.
Yeah, that's the way we looked at it. It was, I mean, every gig that we did was full on. It was, I mean, we never did any rehearsing, so there wasn't any structure to the songs, which meant that some gigs were more successful than others, shall we say. And it's something I go into in a little bit of detail in the book, is, you know, because you come to it from a spontaneous point of view, if something happens, you have to adjust everything, shall we say. Which made it more interesting for the audience as well. So, I mean, somehow it sort of worked. You know, people would come back and see us, and then gig after gig that we did here, you could sort of see more people coming along, and that was, you know, gave us another step up to the next level.
So, what you're really telling me, I think, is that the people who came to see you were really just witnessing a rehearsal.
Yeah, it was, very much. Without all the tedious, have to go over the same riff half a dozen times to get it straight. Yeah. If you made a slight mistake, you just went through it and, you know, ignored it, sort of thing. But it was fun, and because you could never tell what was going to happen each gig that we did.
Well, that's magic.
Yeah, it's very much it. We thought we were Miles Davis and James Brown at their spontaneous best. I think it came out a little differently than that, but...
The real question is, were they really that spontaneous, or was it rehearsed spontaneous?
Maybe James Brown was very rehearsed, but I think Miles was a little more spontaneous.
I agree. So now it's around 1985, you're living in London, your mates have gone their way. What'd you do?
Well, I joined Dave Howard Singers and spent a lovely year with him, doing all sorts of different things. We did lots of really good gigs. We ended up in Amsterdam and Spain. So that was really good. But again, things weren't happening quick enough as far as I was concerned. So I fired Dave, right?
Okay.
So it was very sad, but we made up and we're best of chums
Okay,
now. And
good.
Dave had a lot of hand in helping with the book. But and then I started writing for some English publications when I was living there, in which one thing led to another, and I was offered a job at Island Records in their press office. So finally, after about 10 years of wanting to be at the cutting edge of the music business, I was actually at the cutting edge, working out of their St. Peter's Square office. All the famous acts were as a part of the catalog then, and I was working on things like Tricky and PJ Harvey and all that sort of stuff. So, and that was a glorious 7 years, because that was, it was like living Spinal Tap. It was,
Well, Island Records was a pretty major label at
Yeah.
the time. So now there you are. You've actually got to the absolute center of the storm. You're running around London being important.
yeah, it was like that, really.
It's probably the 90s.
Yeah.
When did this start?
Nice segue. Yeah, it was my brother's son, Rudy, who was looking at our photographs one day and said to him, he said, well, these would look great, really big on a wall. And Simon thought about it and said, he's right. So he put together the idea for an exhibition, which he called Toronto Calling, which was down at the Steam Whistle, in 2010.
Okay.
And that was a big success. And then I started sort of writing the story behind the pictures, sort of thing, but more from a Toronto point of view, what was happening in those years that followed the punk years. So it was definitely a post-punk era. And the stories just seemed to come out of me, and I started talking to some other people to get their recollections and their stories. And before I knew it, there was a real good bulk of quality material. And all I had to do was sort of edit it and get different people to look at it and sift through all the photographs. And, pretty soon it was 5 years later, but here we are, so it worked.
So the process of bringing this book to publication was 5 or 6 years?
Yeah.
My word, that's quite a dedication.
Yeah, well, again, it comes back to when we first started taking pictures, we were influenced by Penny Smith and her photographs of the Clash. So we took all these photographs thinking we're going to be the next Penny Smith, right? But then we always thought that these pictures would look really good in a book.
Yeah.
And after the exhibition, the next thing was to put them all in a book. And I pitched it out to a few publishers, and it's a very competitive business. I just decided I'll just keep in with the feeling of the time that of that era, which was DIY, the whole fanzine thing. A lot of the bands were selling their own cassettes and self-financing their own releases. A lot of it CFMY supported. CKLN was also playing a lot of that stuff. So I just incorporated all that DIY attitude and the textures into the feeling into the book. So a lot of it's very rough. It's original cut and paste stuff. I would take the different articles, type them out and cut them up and scan them, put them on a page. And again, it just sort of organically grew out of that original feeling. So.
But isn't that the fun part? Isn't
Yeah,
that
yeah.
bringing that home after how many decades? It's quite amazing.
It was a really satisfying and cathartic experience.
Do you think the people, musicians and fans, who lived through that period, do you think they brought all the sensibilities that was about into the new century?
Well, you mean as far as how people...
I guess I would say the hippie, some carried forth with the peace, love, and all that sort of thing.
I see, yeah.
Did the punkers, who we all love, did they bring forth all of the things that movement was about?
Yeah, well, I would say, I suppose when you're 17, 18, you very much take through the rest of your life what you experience as you're leaving childhood and coming into adulthood. So, yes, definitely, a lot of the stuff that we went through. I mean, I think punk rock was a defining moment because it sort of opened the door slightly. You could see the possibilities. Mm-hmm. And I think those of us who were part of the post-punk scene were a bit younger than the original punks. Yeah. But we could see that the original punks were sort of fading, and they were very maybe embittered and twisted, and they were very frustrated with the lack of success perhaps that they had. And I think we took a lot of the original enthusiasm and energy from that and twisted it around slightly. And I can only speak from experience, but yes, a lot of those ideals I still have today, like technology, for example. Yes. Very difficult to deal with.
I think some of the frustration and the anger was really part of the movement.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that was brought forth. That element was probably the least desirable element.
Yeah, well, it definitely ruffled a few feathers, as we were talking about earlier. But, there was a lot of energy, and when you're dealing with, friction and energy, you sometimes do things that you just maybe regret a bit later, but at the time seemed like a good idea. Yeah. But I suppose that's the fallacy of youth, I don't know.
So with that in mind, you still have an 18-year-old in your heart. I know you do. I like to think I do too, by the way. What music do you listen to today?
A lot of new stuff. I mean, it's part of my job. I still do PR in London. Okay. So a lot of my thing is to try and keep up with what's going on. Some of it I don't, live to grow. I mean, I don't take to heart, and I don't travel with it. But, there is a lot of really good new music out there. Mm-hmm. But, there's, because of the internet now, it's very easy to rediscover a lot of things that I missed the first time around. And there's lots of stuff, not just from the generation I grew up in, but before that and after that. So, but you're right, there is an energy that I think transcends the ages, and each new generation picks.
Do you hear any music today that might have been influenced by the music of 1980, 81, 82?
Very much. It just came to me. There's a girl singer called Nadine Shaw, who she's got a fantastic voice, a very deep and soulful voice. But the music sounds like the first two albums of Susie and the Banshees. Oh, really? So that sort of droning guitar, but with this amazing voice over top of it. Not like Susie, but just completely different. So because I'm a big fan of that early Susie and the Banshees sound, when I first heard it, it just floored me. And, this album came out earlier this year. Yes. So again, there's a little bit of that old school re-energizing and mutating in a 21st century kind of way.
The latest album from Florence and the Machine, there are some ballads on there that are very powerful that seem to me to be reminiscent of Kate Bush.
Yeah. I don't really know her stuff that well, but you're right.
The newest album is quite stunning, actually. Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to know you.
David Marsden.
It's a pleasure to know you.
Thank you.
Vital Signs too, and of course the book.
Yes, thank you.